The moment my wife called me basically her past at that company dinner, I knew our marriage was over. What I didn't know was how much fun destroying her career would be. My name is Trevor Miles, and I'm a compliance consultant. 43 years old, methodical by nature, and apparently invisible to my wife of 12 years. Alison had been climbing the corporate ladder at Meridian Financial for the past 3 years, transforming from the woman who used to laugh at my dry humor into someone who winced when I spoke at parties. "Trevor's just someone I live with, basically my past," she said that night, gesturing dismissively in my direction, while her colleagues chuckled politely. We were at Chez Laurent, the kind of overpriced restaurant where Alison's sales team celebrated their quarterly numbers. I'd been nursing a scotch and watching my wife perform her new personality when she decided to publicly demote our relationship. Her boss, Graham Cole, smiled at her comment and leaned forward. "Great, then we can talk alone about that Singapore opportunity." Alison's face went pale faster than milk left in the sun. She whispered urgently, "You know him?" Graham's smile widened as he extended his hand toward me. "Trevor Miles, I remember you well. You led that compliance audit at Hartwell Industries 3 years ago, cost me a very lucrative consulting contract." I shook his hand, noting how Alison's breathing had become shallow. "Graham Cole. Yes, I remember. You were billing clients for services never rendered. Sloppy paperwork." "Water under the bridge," Graham said, but his eyes held the warmth of a January morning. "Though I'm surprised to see you here. Alison never mentioned she was married to the man who nearly destroyed my reputation." The table had gone quiet. Alison's work friend Renee was practically vibrating with gossip potential. I could see the wheels turning in everyone's heads, connecting dots that Alison had clearly hoped would never meet. "Well," I said, standing and dropping my napkin on the table, "I should let you all talk business. Alison, I'll see you at home." I was already done, not just with dinner, but with pretending I didn't notice the late nights, the new clothes, the way she'd started pronouncing certain words differently, like she was auditioning for a better life that didn't include me. The drive home gave me time to think. 12 years of marriage, and I'd become someone she lived with. Not her husband, not her partner, just some guy who happened to share her address and remember when she used to be genuine. Our townhouse felt different when I walked in. Same furniture, same photos on the walls, but now it felt like a museum of a relationship that had faded without anyone bothering to announce the funeral. I poured another scotch and sat in my home office, surrounded by the tools of my trade: compliance manuals, audit guidelines, ethics regulations. Funny how life gives you exactly the skills you need, exactly when you need them. My phone buzzed with a text from Alison. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." It was 9:47 p.m. Dinner had ended an hour ago. I opened my laptop and started doing what I do best: investigating irregularities. The next morning, Alison emerged from the shower with the energy of someone who'd been up all night doing cardio. She hummed while getting dressed, chose her most expensive suit, and applied makeup with the precision of a surgeon. "How was work last night?" I asked, not looking up from my coffee and newspaper. "Productive. We're expanding into new markets." She grabbed a piece of toast and checked her reflection in the toaster's surface. "Graham thinks I have real leadership potential." "I'm sure he does." She paused, finally looking at me. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just agreeing with your boss's assessment of your potential." For a moment I saw a flicker of the old Alison, the one who would have caught my sarcasm and thrown it back at me with interest. But this new version just shrugged and headed for the door. "I'll be late again tonight. Big presentation tomorrow." After she left, I called my best friend Samir, who worked in IT consulting and owed me several favors from when I'd helped him navigate a particularly nasty audit at his company. "I need a favor," I said when he answered. "Let me guess. Alison's acting weird, and you want me to check if she's cheating." Am I that transparent? You're that predictable. Also, she friend requested me on Facebook last month and immediately unfriended me when I posted that photo of us at the baseball game. She's trying to erase evidence that you have friends. Samir agreed to meet me for lunch at Murphy's, a dive bar downtown, where the lighting was dim enough for private conversations and the bartender minded his own business. So, what's the plan? Samir asked, sliding into the booth across from me. Hire a private investigator? Put a tracker on her car? Install spyware on her phone? Nothing illegal. I'm a compliance consultant, remember? I deal in documentation, paper trails, and policy violations. I told him about the dinner, about Graham's reaction to seeing me, about Alison's increasingly obvious lies. Graham Cole, Samir repeated. That name sounds familiar. He was billing ghost hours at Hartwell Industries. Classic fraud scheme. Create fake projects, bill real hours, pocket the difference. I caught him red-handed. And now he's your wife's boss. And possibly more. Samir pulled out his phone and started typing. Graham Cole, regional director at Meridian Financial. Divorced twice, lives in that new high-rise downtown, drives a black BMW, license plate. He showed me the screen. Want me to run a background check? Not yet. First, I need to understand Meridian's corporate structure. Specifically, their ethics policies regarding workplace relationships and conflicts of interest. You're going to audit your own wife? I'm going to audit the situation. If there's nothing inappropriate happening, then I'm just a paranoid husband who needs therapy. But if there is, then you destroy them both. Then I follow company policy and report potential violations to the appropriate authorities. Samir grinned. Same thing, but with paperwork. That afternoon, I drove to Meridian Financial's downtown office. I'd never visited Alison's workplace. She'd always said it was boring, that I wouldn't be interested. Now, I understood why. The building was impressive. 30 floors of glass and steel, the kind of place where people wore expensive suits and discussed other people's money. I took the elevator to the 15th floor, where a directory listed Alison's department. Can I help you? Asked the receptionist, a young woman with perfectly straightened hair and a smile that could power a small city. I'm here to see Alison Miles. I'm her husband. The smile flickered. Oh, she's in a meeting with Mr. Cole. They've been in there for about 2 hours. I'll wait. I settled into one of the leather chairs in the waiting area and observed. The office had an open floor plan with glass-walled conference rooms. I could see Alison and Graham in one of them, sitting closer together than seemed necessary for a business meeting. Graham was gesturing animatedly, while Alison laughed, really laughed, the way she used to laugh with me. Excuse me, said a voice behind me. I turned to see a woman in her late 40s, Indian, with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Are you Trevor Miles? Yes. I'm Priya Patel, Director of Human Resources. Could I speak with you privately? She led me to her office, which was smaller than I'd expected, but meticulously organized. Awards and certifications covered one wall, including several for ethics in workplace management. I hope you don't mind me being direct, she said, closing the door. But your presence here is interesting timing. How so? We've been receiving anonymous complaints about favoritism in the sales department. Nothing specific enough to investigate, but enough to make me pay attention. Then you show up, and I remember reading about your work at Hartwell Industries. I said nothing, letting her continue. Alison has received 3 promotions in 2 years. Her bonus structure is significantly higher than her peers, and she's been assigned to several high-profile projects that would typically go to more senior staff. That could just mean she's good at her job. It could, but Graham Cole has final approval on all those decisions. Ms. Patel opened a file on her desk. I've been in HR for 15 years. I know what workplace relationships look like when people think they're being subtle. The question is, do you? I met her eyes. What would you need to launch a formal investigation? Documentation, evidence of policy violations, a formal complaint from someone with standing to make one. Such as an employee, a client, or, she paused meaningfully, a spouse who can demonstrate that company resources are being used inappropriately. I stood to leave. This has been very educational. Mr. Miles, company policy requires disclosure of any romantic relationships between supervisors and direct reports. Failure to disclose is grounds for immediate termination. Good to know. That evening, I waited in the parking garage of Graham's building. I'd followed Alison's GPS location. She'd forgotten I had access to her phone's family tracking and confirmed what I already knew. Her car was parked in visitor space 247, right next to Graham's BMW. I didn't need to see them together. I didn't need photos or video evidence. What I needed was something much more valuable: documentation. The next morning, while Alison showered, I photographed every relevant document in her home office. Bank statements showing expensive dinners charged to her corporate card, travel receipts for business trips that coincidentally matched Graham's calendar, email printouts that she'd carelessly left on her desk. But the real treasure was her laptop, which she'd left open and logged in. Alison had always been careless with technology, assuming that our home was a safe space. She was about to learn how wrong that assumption was. I didn't hack anything. I didn't install spyware or break any passwords. I simply read what was already open on her screen, an email chain between her and Graham discussing their Singapore strategy meeting at his condo. The emails were professional in tone, but intimate in subtext. References to private discussions and one-on-one strategic planning. Most damning was Graham's email from the previous week. Looking forward to our late-night session. Bring the quarterly reports and that wine you mentioned. Alison's response: can't wait. Trevor will be at his audit conference, so we'll have plenty of time to go over everything thoroughly. I'd been at that conference for 3 days. While I was presenting on ethics compliance to a room full of accountants, my wife was having strategic planning sessions with her boss. I forwarded the emails to my personal account, then deleted them from her sent folder. She'd never notice. Alison treated her email like a fast food receipt, something to be discarded as soon as it served its immediate purpose. My phone rang. Samir. "I've got news," he said. "Remember how I said Graham's name sounded familiar? I figured out why. He's been married twice, divorced twice, and both times it was because he was sleeping with subordinates at his companies." "How do you know that?" "Public records from the divorce proceedings. His second wife's lawyer was very thorough. Want to guess what Graham's pattern is? Enlighten me. He targets married women in financial stress or career transitions, promises them promotions, bonuses, opportunities, gets them dependent on his favor, then leverages that into relationships. And when he gets bored, he transfers them to different departments or finds reasons to let them go, but not before making sure they can't complain without implicating themselves." I thought about Alison's recent promotions, her new confidence, her sudden interest in expensive clothes and restaurants. How long does the pattern usually take? 6 to 8 months from first promotion to relationship, another 6 months until he moves on. Alison got her first promotion 7 months ago. Then you're right on schedule for the explosion. That afternoon, I visited Ms. Patel again. This time, I came prepared. "I believe I have the documentation you mentioned," I said, placing a folder on her desk. She reviewed the contents methodically, copies of Alison's emails, her expense reports, Graham's approval signatures on her bonuses, and a timeline I'd created showing the correlation between their business meetings and her career advancement. "This is very thorough," she said finally, almost like it was prepared by someone with extensive audit experience. "I'm good at my job. The question is, what do you want to happen here? I want company policy to be followed. If relationships between supervisors and subordinates must be disclosed, then this relationship should be disclosed. If it violates policy, then appropriate action should be taken. And if that action includes termination?" Then I guess Alison should have read her employee handbook more carefully. Ms. Patel closed the folder. I'll need to verify this information independently. Company policy requires a thorough investigation before any disciplinary action. How long does that usually take? 2 to 3 weeks. We'll need to interview relevant parties, review additional documentation, and consult with legal. Will they know who filed the complaint? Not initially. We'll present it as a routine compliance review triggered by anonymous concerns. I stood to leave, then turned back. Ms. Patel, Graham Cole has done this before, at other companies, with other married employees. I see. That's very helpful context. The investigation began on a Tuesday. Alison came home that evening pale and shaken, claiming she had a headache and going straight to bed. I found her in the bathroom an hour later, staring at herself in the mirror. Everything okay? I asked. HR wants to meet with me tomorrow. Some kind of routine review. About what? They wouldn't say. Just that they're reviewing departmental procedures and want to discuss my role. I made appropriate sympathetic noises while internally celebrating. Ms. Patel was moving faster than I'd expected. The next evening, Alison was even worse. She'd barely touched her dinner and kept checking her phone obsessively. How was the HR meeting? I asked. Fine. Just routine questions about reporting structures and approval processes. But her hands were shaking as she said it. Anything I can help with? I know HR procedures pretty well from the compliance side. No! The word came out sharper than she'd intended. I mean, no thank you. It's just boring corporate stuff. My phone buzzed with a text from Samir. Want to grab drinks tomorrow? I have updates. I met him at Murphy's the next evening. The bar was crowded, which provided good cover for our conversation. Your wife's boss is panicking, Samir said without preamble. I have a contact at Meridian who says Graham's been in closed-door meetings with legal all week. How does your contact know that? She's the legal department's assistant. Also, she hates Graham because he tried to hit on her at the Christmas party while his date was in the bathroom. What kind of meetings? The kind where lawyers use words like liability and wrongful termination and harassment policy. Apparently, HR is being very thorough. I sipped my beer and tried to look concerned rather than satisfied. Any word on how Alison's handling it? According to office gossip, she's been crying in the bathroom. Renee, that's her work friend, right, has been telling people that Alison is stressed about personal issues. Renee talks too much. Lucky for you, she's also been asking a lot of questions about Graham's previous relationships. Apparently, your wife isn't the first married woman he's taken a special interest in. The next week crawled by. Alison became increasingly paranoid, checking her email constantly and making hushed phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room. She started working even later, claiming the department was under extra scrutiny and everyone needed to demonstrate their value. On Friday, she didn't come home at all. I called her at midnight. No answer. I texted, "Are you okay?" Her response came an hour later. "Staying at Renee's tonight. Too tired to drive." But I knew Renee lived 15 minutes from our house, and Alison had never been too tired to drive anywhere in her life. Saturday morning, she returned with coffee and bagels, acting like nothing had happened. "How was your sleepover?" I asked. "Fine. We just talked about work stuff and had too much wine." "Anything you want to share? About the work stuff?" For a moment, I thought she might actually tell me the truth. Her face softened and she looked like the woman I'd married, vulnerable, uncertain, human. Then her phone rang. Graham's name appeared on the screen. "I need to take this," she said, walking into the other room. I could hear fragments of the conversation. "Can't keep meeting like this. And what if they find out? And need to be more careful." When she returned, the vulnerable moment was gone. "I have to go into the office for a few hours." "On Saturday?" "Big project, you know how it is." I knew exactly how it was. Monday brought the confrontation I'd been expecting. Alison came home early, her face flushed with anger and something that looked like fear. "We need to talk," she said, dropping her purse on the kitchen counter with enough force to rattle the dishes. "About what?" "About what you've been doing behind my back." I set down my newspaper and gave her my full attention. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Don't play dumb, Trevor. I know you've been talking to people at my office. I know you've been asking questions." "Have I?" "Graham told me about your little chat with HR, how you've been spreading rumors and making accusations." "What kind of accusations?" "You know exactly what kind." Her voice was rising, and I could see the panic behind her anger. "You're trying to destroy my career because you can't handle that I'm successful." "Is that what Graham told you?" "Graham doesn't have to tell me anything. I can see what you're doing. You're jealous and vindictive, and you can't stand that I've moved beyond being your little housewife." "When were you ever my little housewife? You know what I mean. You want me to stay small and boring and grateful for your attention, but I'm not that person anymore." "No," I said quietly. "You're not." Something in my tone must have warned her, because she took a step back. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you're right. You're not the person I married. That person had integrity. That person wouldn't sleep with her boss for promotions. That person wouldn't lie to her husband every single day." The color drained from her face. "I don't know what—" "Alison." I stood up, and she took another step back. "I've seen the emails. I know about the late-night meetings at Graham's condo. I know about the expense account dinners and the business trips that weren't business. You've been spying on me. I've been paying attention. There's a difference. You had no right. I had every right. I'm your husband. Or was. Until you decided I was just someone you live with." She started crying then. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration, of someone who'd been caught and was angry about it rather than sorry for it. "You don't understand," she said. "Graham and I, we have a connection. He sees my potential. He believes in me. He's using you, Alison, just like he's used other married women at other companies. You're not special to him. You're a pattern." "That's not true." "It is true. I can show you the divorce records, the harassment complaints, the other women who thought they were special too." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to process this information, trying to reconcile it with whatever story Graham had been telling her. "Even if that's true," she said finally, "it doesn't change how I feel. I love him. You love the promotions, you love the bonuses, you love feeling important, but you don't love him, and he sure as hell doesn't love you." "You're wrong." "Then leave him. Tell HR about your relationship. Follow company policy and see what happens." "I can't do that." "Why not?" "Because—" She stopped, realizing she was about to admit that their relationship violated company policy. "Because you know it's wrong," I finished for her. "You know it's unethical and probably illegal and definitely fireable." "It's not illegal. Harassment by a supervisor who controls promotions and bonuses? Yeah, it is. It's not harassment, it's consensual." "Is it? Or did Graham make it clear that your career advancement depended on your personal relationship?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "HR is going to complete their investigation. They're going to find exactly what I found. Graham is going to be fired, and you're going to be demoted or transferred or also fired." "You can't know that." "I can, because I understand how these things work. I've seen it before." "And you're happy about it. You're actually happy that my career is being destroyed." "I'm not happy, Alison. I'm disappointed. I'm hurt. I'm angry. But I'm not happy." "Then stop this. Call HR and tell them it was all a mistake." "I can't do that." "Why not?" "Because it wasn't a mistake. And because you haven't asked me to forgive you. You've asked me to help you cover it up." She stared at me for a moment longer, then grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" "Somewhere that isn't here." "Alison, She stopped but didn't turn around. When you're ready to have an honest conversation about our marriage, I'll be here. But I won't be here forever. She left without another word. 3 days later, Ms. Patel called me at work. The investigation is complete, she said. I thought you should know the outcome. I'm listening. Graham Cole has been terminated for violation of company ethics policies, specifically failure to disclose a romantic relationship with a direct subordinate and abuse of supervisory authority. And Alison? Mrs. Miles has been given the option to transfer to a different department with a salary reduction or to resign with a neutral reference. What did she choose? She's requested time to consider her options. I thanked Ms. Patel and hung up. That evening, I waited for Alison to come home. She'd been staying at various friends' houses since our confrontation, but she still needed to collect her things. She arrived around 8 o'clock, looking exhausted and defeated. I heard about Graham, I said. She nodded, but didn't speak. What are you going to do? I don't know. Her voice was barely above a whisper. They're offering me a position in accounting. 30% pay cut, no direct reports, no client contact. That's better than being fired. Is it? I'll be the woman who slept with her boss for promotions. Everyone will know. I'll never be taken seriously again. You could resign and find something else. With what reference? Alison Miles is a competent employee when she's not sleeping with her supervisor? I'd never heard her use language like that. The polished veneer was finally cracking. What about Graham? I asked. What about him? Are you still in contact? She laughed bitterly. Graham made it very clear that our relationship was a regrettable professional error that he needs to put behind him. He's already talking to lawyers about protecting his reputation. So he's throwing you under the bus. He's protecting himself, just like you predicted. We sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, she looked at me directly for the first time in weeks. I'm sorry, she said. For which part? All of it. The affair, the lies, the way I treated you. You didn't deserve any of that. No, I didn't. I thought I wanted something different. Something more exciting than what we had. And now? Now I realize that what we had was real, and what I thought I wanted was just an illusion. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or calculation, but all I saw was exhaustion and genuine regret. What do you want to happen now? I asked. I want to fix this. I want to fix us. I don't think that's possible, Alison. Why not? I made a mistake, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it right. Because trust isn't something you can just decide to rebuild, and because I don't think you understand what you actually did wrong. Of course I do. I cheated on you. You did more than that. You tried to erase me from your life while still keeping me around for convenience. You introduced me as someone you live with to people who should have known I was your husband. You made me feel invisible in my own marriage. She started crying again, but these tears seemed different, less angry, more genuinely sad. I know I hurt you, she said, but people make mistakes. People can change. Some mistakes are too big to come back from. So that's it? 12 years of marriage and you're just done? I was done the night you called me your past. Everything since then has just been paperwork. She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. What happens now? Now you decide whether to take the transfer or resign. I've already filed for divorce. When? Last week. You'll be served with papers tomorrow. You didn't waste any time. Neither did you. She stood up and walked toward the stairs, then stopped. Trevor, for what it's worth, I really am sorry. You deserved better than what I gave you. Yes, I said. I did. 6 months later, I was sitting in Murphy's with Samir, celebrating the finalization of my divorce. The settlement had been remarkably straightforward, Alison's documented misconduct had eliminated any possibility of alimony, and we'd split our assets down the middle. "So what's next?" Samir asked, raising his beer in a toast. "Back to work. I've got 3 new audit contracts lined up." I meant personally. Personally, I'm enjoying being someone who doesn't live with anyone. Samir laughed. "You know, I heard through the grapevine that Graham Cole is having trouble finding work. Apparently, word has gotten around about his management style. That's unfortunate for him. Also heard that Alison took the transfer. She's working in accounts payable now, processing invoices. Good for her. Honest work. You don't feel bad about any of it?" I considered the question seriously. Did I feel bad that my ex-wife's career had been destroyed? Did I regret exposing her affair and ending our marriage? "No," I said finally. "I feel relieved." Relieved? For 12 years, I thought I was married to someone who loved me, but was just going through a rough patch. Finding out that she actually had contempt for me was painful, but it was also clarifying. How so? Now I know that the problem wasn't that I wasn't good enough for her. The problem was that she wasn't good enough for me. My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. "Trevor, this is Alison. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that I'm doing better. The therapy is helping, and I think I'm starting to understand why I made the choices I made. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope someday you can think of our good years without too much bitterness. You were a better husband than I deserved." I showed the message to Samir. "Are you going to respond?" "No. She's right that I don't want to hear from her. But I'm glad she's getting help." "Very mature of you." "I'm a mature guy. That's probably why she found me so boring." We finished our drinks in comfortable silence. Outside, the city was alive with people heading home from work, meeting friends for dinner, starting their evenings. I thought about joining them, about finding new routines and new relationships. But first, I had one more stop to make. Ms. Patel was working late when I arrived at Meridian Financial. I'd called ahead to make sure she'd see me. "Mr. Miles," she said, gesturing for me to sit down. "How can I help you?" "I wanted to thank you for handling the investigation so professionally." "I was just doing my job." "You did it well. I also wanted to give you something." I handed her a folder containing documentation of Graham's pattern of behavior at his previous companies, the information Samir had helped me compile. "What's this?" "Insurance. In case Graham ever tries to claim that his termination was unjustified. This shows a clear pattern of predatory behavior toward female subordinates." She reviewed the documents carefully. "This is very thorough. Where did you get all this?" "Public records, mostly. Divorce filings, employment disputes, court documents, all perfectly legal to obtain." "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because Graham Cole is going to land somewhere else eventually, and he's going to do this again. Maybe next time, the woman won't have a husband who knows how to document everything." Ms. Patel closed the folder and looked at me with something that might have been respect. "You know, in 15 years of HR work, I've seen a lot of workplace relationship situations. Most of the time, the betrayed spouse either ignores it or makes a scene. You're the first one who treated it like a compliance issue." "That's what it was." "Yes, but most people can't separate their emotions from the process the way you did." "I had plenty of emotions. I just didn't let them interfere with the documentation." She smiled. "Have you ever considered a career in HR?" "Thanks, but I like what I do. There's something satisfying about finding the truth hidden in paperwork." "I imagine there is." I stood to leave, then turned back one final time. "Ms. Patel? The anonymous complaints you mentioned, the ones that started your interest in the sales department. What about them? How anonymous were they, really?" Her smile widened. "Sometimes the most effective complaints are the ones that come from people who understand exactly what documentation is needed to trigger an investigation." "Hypothetically speaking." "Of course. Hypothetically." I walked out of Meridian Financial for the last time, feeling lighter than I had in months. The evening air was crisp, and the city lights were just beginning to flicker on. My phone buzzed with another text, this time from Samir. "Drinks tomorrow? I heard about a new place downtown." I typed back, "Sure, but somewhere with better lighting than Murphy's. I'm ready to see things clearly." As I walked to my car, I reflected on the past year. I'd lost a wife, but I'd gained something more valuable, the knowledge that I could trust myself to handle whatever